session. And a recording has just been started. Hope you're all okay with that. And just in terms of roadmap for the session today, then we've got a lovely panel with us that have all been involved in this research in some way, shape or form. So we'll offer their views on that first of all throughout, and then towards the end of the session there'll be opportunity to ask any questions that you've got. So as we're obviously talking through things, if things come up in your mind, then please pop them in the chat and we'll do the questions towards the end. So just to set the scene a little bit, in terms of why we commissioned Learning Work Institute to carry out this research for us. At the start of the pandemic, then, like a lot of organisations, we didn't have any online virtual provision at all. We're very much like a face-to-face delivery organisation. But we knew very soon that, we wanted to do something and carry on supporting young people because, the young people were telling us that, they were feeling a lot of disappointment at that time about opportunities that they'd, worked really hard for that were then, being cancelled as a result of the pandemic. So even though it felt, quite hard for us to imagine what our programs might look like at that time in an online environment, we were really keen to do something. But not just do something for the sake of it as well. I mean, we really wanted to make sure that, what we did was still having like the impact that we hoped it would, in line with, the impact that we'd achieved previously. So that was really important for us. So we wanted to take an evidence-based approach, I suppose, to what we were doing. And I think, we knew that, the very first version of our online programs, wouldn't be the last. We knew that there'd be different versions over time. So we wanted that external scrutiny really about what we were doing, to help inform what our programs could look like in the future. And that's how we got to the point of working with the Learning Work Institute. So first of all, to kick us off, I'm going to hand over to Jess. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then obviously giving us a bit more of an overview about the research that you carried out, that would be great.
Thank you, Jodie. So I am a research manager at Learning Work. I was the project manager for this research project, which was a great project to be involved with. I'm just going to very quickly talk a little bit about what we did, how we did it, and what we found out. It's going to be a real canter through our findings. So any questions, please get back to me at the end. And I'd also urge you to read our report. So our approach was as Jodie said, we wanted to find out about the impact of the move to online delivery on different groups of young people and provide feedback about what works. The research was conducted between October 2020 and June 2021, which meant we could look at 2 cohorts who'd experienced the fully online programme. The research involved interviews with employers, staff and volunteers, focus groups with young people and analysis of learner survey data. So this was data collected by EY Foundation that asked learners before and after their programme to rate their skills, careers, knowledge and their insight into barriers about employment. And it meant we could compare the pre-pandemic cohort and the pandemic cohort. We're assisted by a team of peer researchers, one of whom, Yamin, is going to be talking to us a little bit later. And they were a really great help in sort of helping us engage with young people and make sure our research was meaningful. So EY Foundation transitioned really quickly to online delivery. And I think what was one of the most impressive things was that they continued to engage with all kinds of young people. So ESOL speakers, young people from ethnic minority backgrounds, care leavers, refugees. None of these groups were excluded from online delivery, which I think speaks a lot about how online delivery can be inclusive. We found that certain things worked really well online, mentoring, because it was no longer limited by geography. Some young people and some employers were much more able to take part and to engage. We found some really good innovative activities that particularly the businesses were using. Young people were learning really valuable new skills and learning how to adapt to the future world of remote working. There were some things that were more challenging. As we all know, being online all day can be hard work. Staff and employers thought it was a bit more difficult to identify who needed help and to give that help. There was issues around learning the tacit knowledge about a business. So going in, having a cup of coffee, that informal insight was more difficult to get online. Some people had more difficult work environments. So even though EY Foundation gave them equipment, some of them didn't necessarily have private and quiet spaces to work. In terms of outcomes, so the main outcomes of these programs are that young people will improve their skills, improve their confidence, and get better insight into future careers. What we found was that the pandemic cohort were generally less confident and experiencing more barriers at the start of their program, which I think is what you'd expect. I'm sure during a pandemic, we're all less confident and experiencing more barriers. But what was really interesting was that over the program, their distance traveled was generally the same. So the effect of online learning was still seeing the same change for people. The only issue with this was that Black young people and ESOL speakers seemed to experience less benefits from online delivery. This was quite nuanced and we couldn't identify exactly why this was happening, but it was just something to watch. And so very quickly to move on to our recommendations. So we felt that the future for EY delivery could look a flexible model of delivery for both employers and young people. That could include some employers and some young people that want entirely face-to-face, some who want entirely online, but with hybrid as the default. Within that, I think it's important to identify where face-to-face matters. So I think some elements of business experience, to get that experience, physical experience of being in an office, is worth keeping face-to-face. First day of the program where people meet, establish ground rules and collect tech could be good face-to-face, and also a graduation ceremony could be a good opportunity to meet face-to-face. It's good to use online delivery to improve inclusivity. So this can mean that people are mentored by people like them rather than people who are geographically close to them. Young people can be connected to online networks, whether that's disabled people, Black British people, or people from LGBT communities. It's a really good opportunity to help young people build the skills they need for the future world of work. And for some people, young people with disabilities, young people in remote locations, online delivery means they can access training they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. Really important to continue reducing the barriers to online delivery. So providing tech and providing training, looking at providing co-working space or bringing young people to a face-to-face mode if they don't have access to a private space to work. Let young people choose how to communicate, if they want their cameras on, if they want to use the chat, if they want to talk. And finally, I think it's really important to value digital communication. So the young people who'd studied online had made friends, had had a good experience. And I think it's important to recognise that digital communication is real life, is not an alternative to real life, and to recognise that. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Jess. That was a quick canter through, as she said. You'll be able to see the full reports on Learning Work, their website, as well as the EY Foundation website as well, where obviously there's a lot more information about the recommendations. So next, I'm going to go over to Yamin. If you want to introduce yourself and talk about how you became involved in this project, that would be great.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all well. My name is Yamin and I'm a current EY Youth Ambassador. So when I first found out about the opportunity to become a peer researcher, I immediately wanted to get involved. First and foremost, any opportunity to get involved with the EY Foundation is quite massive for me. They do hold a close place in my heart because they introduced me to the world of work through the Smart Futures program when I was 17. And like despite growing up in like a rough area where I'm surrounded by kind of like limited opportunities to work, it taught me loads of skills and gave me confidence going forward. My personal experience with the EY Foundation are like extremely positive ones. The staff there are one of the kindest I've met, so welcoming. And for me personally, I'd want kind of all the future programs to be delivered on a similar quality scale. And similarly, what the EUI Foundation gave to me, I'd like to help out young people who have had similar disadvantages in upbringings like myself, but more focused on why I wanted to become involved in the peer researching role. COVID-19 was a real eye-opener for many of us. Me personally, I always had like a curiosity about how COVID-19 had impacted young people. And when I saw the title peer researcher, it was a title I wasn't really too familiar with. So it took me out of my comfort zone, but it was extremely interesting and I learned a lot of skills from it. On the topic of what it was like to actually be involved, my role was to ask young people questions about the delivery of the program, and it was quite an interesting skill because, like, when I was asking questions, if a young person, like, if nobody volunteered to step up to answer questions, I'd have to kind of like reword my question, and that would make them feel a bit more comfortable with answering. And it's a skill Learning and Work Institute also taught me. And overall, like throughout the 9 months I worked on the peer researching, it was a really good project. It really developed my communication skills, especially with young people, and it even gave me confidence to ask questions. And yeah, so overall it was a rewarding project because it not only benefited us as peer researchers, I think there was about 6 of us, but on the wider scale, it kind of has like a domino effect on the delivery of future programs also, and how they get delivered, which I'll come to also in a second. And finally, my reaction to the report findings. I found the report findings quite interesting. Younger people were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and some of the young people we spoke to told us how hard it was to find like a job, and some people had even lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And evidence also backs this up because 3 in 5 people had lost their jobs under the age group of under 25s. And yeah, it was always going to be more challenging having the program virtually, as it was new to everyone, even me myself as a personal experience. I had my second year of university all virtual, and it was quite hard to adapt to. But in the same way, for the young people, they expressed how meeting people and building networks were slightly more harder virtual than in real life. And yeah, other issues such as asking for support and having Wi-Fi issues. And some of them also expressed their concerns about having about how online delivery was a bit more tiring. So scheduling more breaks in the future would keep up productivity, which is another recommendation. However, all the online skills that the young people learned had some positive impacts as well for the long term. So in the future world of work, we're most likely gonna be going into like a hybrid system, and I feel like it was really good for young people to kind of develop IT skills in terms of like talking in meetings, working from home. One skill I wish I had when I did the Smart Futures in 2018. It also increased their adaptability skills and confidence. So yeah, going forward, I feel like one thing I took from it as well was for future programs to be delivered in kind of like a hybrid system, so they get the most out of developing their IT skills and in-person skills. But overall, the peer researching work was an enjoyable experience. It taught me loads of skills, and many thanks to the staff at Learning and Work who taught me and a few others about the fundamentals of peer researching, and thanks to the EUI Foundation for giving me and a few others such a valuable opportunity.
Thanks, Yamin. You were so well prepared. I didn't even have to ask you any questions. You answered them all without me even asking. Thank you for that. So that was really interesting. So now next on the panel, we're going to move to Darren, who is from ONS as one of our employer partners. So Darren, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and starting off maybe about why you're involved with the EY Foundation.
Certainly. So my name's Darren Weeks. I work for the Office for National Statistics. For those that don't know, we're a civil service department. For us, the EY Foundation came to our agenda back at the start of this year. And it was something that was passed to myself by one of my colleagues in another part of the business. And we immediately thought it fitted really nicely with the type of work that we've been looking at doing. Around socioeconomic diversity within the organisation, about programs to give people those touch points into a tech career, and also the sort of the way in for the future for them to be able to sort of explore that as an option. We realised within the civil service that we've got a bit of a reputation of everyone being sort of middle-aged bowler hat wearing, which we're very definitely not. But what we do know is that we do take more people from the higher socioeconomic routes, not on purpose, but just because of the way that we're set up. And we want to fix that. And we want to find a way to, actually, the biggest thing is we want to be representative of the people that we represent. We can't be representative of the UK when we're passing statistics that affect the UK if everybody that works within the organisation is from a small percentage of the population. So it was really important for us to look at that, and this looked like a fantastic opportunity to actually get the ball rolling in that direction with how can we give people experience within a tech organisation that is within the public sector, give them exposure to the types of options and careers that they do have, and show them the multitude of different ways that they can get into that career. Maybe sort of breaking down some of those barriers that people have got where they think, oh, I can't work in that unless I've got a degree in it, or I can't do this unless I know somebody that's already in the organisation that'll get me in, and you know, showing people there are actually other ways of coming in, and there is support there for them. So that's why it was important for us really to be involved in this. So.
Great, thank you. And after reading the report then, I guess, what are your views on like the findings that came out of it? Do they like resonate with you after your experience of being involved in the programme, or the things that surprised you, I suppose?
Yeah, so picking up on some of the things that have already been said around that's a hybrid model. Hybrid is a word that's going around ONS a lot at the moment because it is what we're going to for our employment. Most of us haven't been in the office since March last year. I've been in 5 times and I only live just around the corner. But we'll go to a bit of a mix where we go in occasionally and we work at home the rest of the time. What I did notice is delivering some parts of the 2-week program for TechSmart were they would have really benefited from being face to face. We couldn't give that same engagement or support doing it virtually as we could have done if we could have done it face to face. But that said, doing it virtually meant that we could actually have a group of people from across the different parts of the UK. Had we based it in Newport or Titchfield, and both of our sites are down in the south of the country, that would have been a massive problem because we would have had to have found ways to bring people to the location we wanted them to be in, maybe just for a day or 2 days. So it was a kind of a challenge and a challenge and a benefit both at the same time, doing everything remotely. I think the delivery side of it, certainly the 3 teams across our business that actually delivered the work pieces, said that although it worked and it worked successfully, they were really limited on what they could do because of the fact we had to do it virtually. Had we had people on site with us, we would have been able to give them a lot more access. We would have been able to supervise them with that access. So we would have potentially been able to give them more meaningful work than we did.
Yeah, so it sounds like a hybrid model of sort of work probably better for you, like in the future. But I suppose hopefully, I mean, we won't go back into a pandemic. I know we're not even out of it yet, but hopefully there won't be another one. But I suppose looking forward then, do you think that there is like a place for remote delivery at all, or is it that you would, you know, for your organisation, definitely like hybrid or face-to-face would be something that works better?
I think it depends upon the format. For Tech Smart Futures, we were able to deliver something. And we were able to deliver something that we felt was meaningful, and that, you know, the feedback that we got was that it really helped people. Had it been something that wasn't within a tech space, I think it would have been more difficult. But I think hybrid is probably the way forward, but it's balancing the wider audience of being able to do it digitally with the what can we actually deliver when we do it digitally. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it is like a lot of the time down to like the individual sector and employer, isn't it, about their own working practices and what, you know, might work best for them, I suppose.
And I think it'll, you know, we're all probably still in the learning phase of doing things digitally. I know I am. You know, I do careers fairs with universities, and they're all very much still in the learning phase of how do we do this when we can't get everyone in a hall. But they're getting better every year. You know, the careers fairs this year are hundreds of times better than they were at this point last year. And I think it'll be the same with things like this and training programs, that actually we learn from the things we can do and the things that don't work well. And next year it'll be even better if we have to do it digitally. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day is definitely a school day still at the moment when it comes to online and digital. Thank you for that, Darren. That was really interesting as well. So next we're going to move over to Lynne, who is the acting CEO here at the EY Foundation. So Lynne, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and then maybe talk a bit about the next steps for us, I suppose, and what we're going to do as a result of the findings of this research.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Jodie. Will do. So as Jodie said, I'm Lynne, and I'm the acting CEO for the EY Foundation. I've been in the foundation for just over 7 years now. So I joined it just before we launched the charity back in 2014. So it's been through a number of different stages and challenges over the years, but I don't think any of us were quite anticipating last year in the pandemic. But I guess with regards to kind of what are the next steps for the foundation, and I guess the learnings that we've taken from the report, I guess the key thing for us is there isn't one size that fits all. I think like most things in life, and I think we've heard that from Darren and from Yamin and also from Jess as well. So I think a key recommendation in the report for us is that we develop flexible models of delivery. So the plan at the foundation is we're going to now have 3 models of delivery, which we will flex depending on the young people we're working with, the location they're in, their needs, and also the employers we're working with. So the models that we will now be working with are 100% face-to-face. So that's the model we used to have pre-pandemic, hybrid, which is a mixture of both, and then 100% online. And as I say, what we'll be doing is assessing what's most appropriate for the young people and employers and sort of taking it from there. So the idea is that when young people sort of engage with us, we'll do an assessment at the recruitment and the assessment stage to identify, you know, what program might be most beneficial for them. Would it be wholly online if they're really far away from one of our delivery centres? Have they got accessibility or disability issues that might mean online is more appropriate? Or are they likely to have, I guess, significant confidence issues? So a lot of our care experienced young people we found actually have struggled with online engagement. So for them, a face-to-face model might be better. So we will flex it to suit. Before I came on this call, I did actually ask our corporate partnerships team about any of our employers that we're working with from now until June and what model they've selected, I guess, from those 3. And all of them, and this is across tech, public sector, financial services, the security industry, sustainability industry, and health and social care, all of them have opted for a hybrid model at the moment. And I think really that's, I guess, a kind of reflection or a mirror of how businesses are working at the moment, with people starting to go back into the office, but perhaps not full time and just working a couple of days in the office. So that's, I guess, the key sort of next step for the foundation.
Super. And then I suppose looking to the future, what do you think that good could look like for young people?
Yeah.
Hard question.
Yeah, this is quite a broad question, really. I think, you know, if you're working in the employability space, I don't think we need to rip up the rule book yet. So the soft skills, the exposure to employers that lots of charities are providing is still really, really key. And I think, to be honest, good support now doesn't necessarily look that much different to how it looked a couple of years ago. It's all about tailoring it as much as possible to the young people and making sure that they've got the tools they need to kind of make engagement and as easy and as accessible as possible. So I guess that being said, there are a number of recommendations from the report that I think you really do need to focus on, especially if you're working with young people from low-income backgrounds that don't necessarily have the tools at their fingertips to participate in programs. So I think the first one is the right technology. And I think when people think about the right technology, they also, you know, they automatically think laptops and the hardware, but actually the Wi-Fi connectivity or data plans, they're really, really key to make sure that people aren't digitally excluded. So don't just think about the hardware. I think about that connectivity as well. And that's something that we've had to do over the last year. We've been lending laptops to young people to participate in the programs, providing dongles if they to support with Wi-Fi connectivity, or supporting them with data plans to help that. One of the elements that I think is a little bit trickier for organisations to support with is that appropriate sort of physical work environment or learning place that Jess mentioned, because I think, you know, that really depends on the young person and their circumstances. But one of the things that we found was quite helpful for the young people is a really simple thing of just teaching them how to blur the background on their camera, so they don't, you know, they're not conscious of what they've got around them or what they haven't got around them. So we found that was a really effective and simple step that we could take. But one of the things that we're looking at exploring as an organisation is the opportunity for potential co-working spaces for young people that don't have an appropriate learning environment. Or I guess the other option is that they participate only in a face-to-face model, which is still one of the options. I think as well, on the sort of the support side, I think it's really important that people don't presume that just because they're a young person, they know everything they need to know about digital. Because whilst young people might be, you know, and this is, you know, a generalization, whilst they might be up there on TikTok, a lot of the young people we support have never used Outlook before or Microsoft Teams. So having really accessible sort of step-by-step guides that the young people can work through themselves or support to help them work through, I think is something that sounds very, very simple, but I think a lot of people miss because they just presume young people, digital natives, you know, just do this like that. So accessible digital guides, I think, really, really important. I think the other thing is, as Jodie said, you know, it's not just a matter of shifting your content from face-to-face delivery online. It doesn't work like that. It needs to be tailored and it needs to be tweaked to that digital environment, so you still get that interaction and engagement. And I think a key thing that the young people have told us, and also the employers as well, when they've been working with the young people, is just having to build in, I guess, much more time within your sort of program delivery model to really check in with the young people and make sure that they are engaging, that they are comprehending what you're talking through. So I think there are lots more recommendations, I would say, in the report about what good would look like, but I think they're just a few that that I would pull out.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, I would say that when we sort of started at the beginning of this, we definitely fell into some of those traps a little bit around, you know, assuming that young people will know how to use Teams and Outlook and those things, like, without any guidance. And so, you know, those have been things that we've like subsequently obviously implemented as a result of the learning that we're doing during this time. So there's definitely some useful things in there, I think, in terms of recommendations. So thank you to the panel for all of your views. It's really interesting to hear from you all. We're on to the section of the afternoon where we can take some questions. I can't see many in the chat, but I do have a few to start us off. So whilst we're going through these, if anybody has any specific questions, then please do feel free to put them in the chat. But I suppose I'll open it up to anybody as well to ask to answer this question. But in terms of I guess organisations now that are going into, you know, this flexible model of delivery or, you know, hybrid delivery models, is there anything that you think really can't move online or just doesn't work at all? I mean, we've touched a little bit on things that I suppose are more challenging to do online, but is there anything that you think's like, just forget it, there's just no point?
I'll kick off if you like, Jodie. I think pretty much everything works online, to be honest, and young people get a really good experience. And I think, Jess sort of showing that the young people got sort of broadly the same outcomes on the online program as they did from the face-to-face kind of sort of proves that. But I think that understanding and that kind of organizational culture piece is a really key bit that it is just really, really hard to replicate online. And we've tried a few things through the programs, like giving young people buddies and staying in the same teams and things like that, so they can develop these deeper relationships. But I think that organizational culture is the one aspect for me that employers have told us it's just really, really hard to replicate that online. So I think, where you can, even if you're looking at doing 100% online sort of delivery model, thinking about ways you can sort of distill that organizational culture. And I don't think there's any simple way to do this. I think that's one of the trickiest bits to kind of move online. But Darren's probably got an opinion on this one.
For us, there's a couple of kind of key areas. We've said inductions. So across the business, we've said that going forward, when we can, we would like inductions to happen face to face. Now that might not be an induction on your first day. It might be that your actual induction as a new employee happens, for any sort of delivery, happens remotely, because we can't bring everyone in one-to-one to do a face-to-face one. But actually every couple of weeks we will have an induction group that come into the office. They get to sort of get the feel of the office and the people, and meet the other colleagues and the people who started at the same time as them across the business. Grow those networks that we don't get to grow because we don't meet people in the kitchen anymore and have a chat with people that we don't know who they are. That side of things, we want to try and keep that where we can. Obviously at the moment in Wales, the advice is still work from home, so we can't but as soon as we can, we want to go back to that. And similar for things like big team meetings, I'm not talking about the weekly team meeting, but if we're having a big team meeting for the directorate, actually if we can do that face to face, let's do it face to face, because it's maybe once a quarter, but it's a good opportunity to get everyone together again. So but I think, as you said,
especially
everything
about the
can be done
inductions.
remotely.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think, on your induction point, that's something that we're definitely thinking of, because when you read the report, you'll see one of our main challenges was young people not wanting to use the cameras when obviously they're engaging in the programme. And so we're hoping that if we can obviously get them together at the start of the programme and they've all met each other and that kind of thing first, then that'll help with confidence as well in terms of using the camera function and that kind of thing. So that's also something that we're hoping to do as a kind of move forward into this hybrid world. So I do tend to agree. Yamin, do you have anything, a view on this? Is there anything that you think can't move online?
Yeah, definitely. As Darren said, that office experience, for me, when I was a Smart Futures intern, that was probably one of my most memorable things I can take away from it, because before Smart Futures, I never knew what an office looked like or what type of works go on within an office, and actually having that kind of environment there is way different to just being online. And as you said, Jodie, some young people didn't really feel comfortable with putting on a camera. I had that experience last year as a uni student. Like every class I had, no one wanted to put on their camera, and it's almost as if it's just a teacher speaking to a bunch of like you're not looking at faces, just one person talking to a group of people, and it's so different to actually having that kind of in-person interaction. Because another thing I took away from my program was it was really much more simpler to build networks, build friendships, build relationships, and that's something you can't really get if it's just fully online. But yeah, and in terms of kind of like, I'd say graduation and stuff, I feel like that's like a kind of like a big event that some people would like prefer to celebrate in person as opposed to online, because it doesn't really have like the same effect. But yeah, that's just my personal view.
Have we lost Jodie?
She's disappeared from my screen, so I think we might have done.
So we had a question in the chat about reimbursing young people for travel, and I think that is one thing that EY Foundation does. Could you talk a little bit about that, Lynne?
Yeah, so all of our programs are for young people from low income backgrounds, and we're really we're really passionate and stick to the fact that they deserve a wage for their input like any other employer would. So all of our young people receive a salary basically for the week that they have of their paid employability training, and for any of their work experience. Sometimes for young people, because they get paid the week after they've participated. So for some young people that might be too late. So we do have bursaries for young people that can't afford the travel, or other things like clothes, for example. If they don't feel like they've got the appropriate clothes to come into the office, then we've also got a bursary to support them with that. So yeah, but when we do find that actually paying young people a wage really changes, I guess, the dialogue between the young people and the employers. Employers, see them as a proper employee. They don't just stick them in a broom cupboard to do some photocopying, because they're investing in this young person. It means they spend a lot of time thinking through what that meaningful work experience could look like. And I think also it's important for us because it helps young people feed into some of the life skills around, what does a pay slip look like? How can you check you've been paid the right amount? Sort of financial literacy and all those kind of other things that come with having a job and earning a wage.
Thanks, Lynne. Sorry about that, everybody. I had a power cut. There's a big storm going on in Manchester, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's kicked me out of Zoom. I'm so sorry about that. Hopefully it'll carry on. But if any of you are in Manchester, you'll know how big the storm is. It's actually wild outside. I'm not sure what's going on. I missed where you got to with the questions, Jess. I assume you took over for me.
Yes,
crack on.
There was just a question in the chat about support for young people. So I think the other interesting question is about how can online delivery be used to improve inclusivity? So what ways are there that we can be more inclusive through moving online? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in first to that one.
I don't mind coming out the blocks again first. Start the ball rolling. So I think from an inclusivity perspective, we found that it's really sort of broken down geographical barriers, and I'm sure other people have found this kind of just in their day-to-day setting, but it's enabled us to reach young people in much more rural settings that we just didn't have access to before. So I think from an inclusivity perspective, sort of that geographic location is really, really helpful to break down. There are also so many great technologies and tools out there to help people with specific learning impediments or disabilities. So I know we've got a number of people, for example, in the foundation team that struggle with dyslexia, and actually there are so many great packages on the laptops that we can provide to help them have a better experience. And it's the same for young people. So I think that assessment early on about what the needs are is really, really important. I was listening to a podcast the other day on Charity Digital about how the Scouts have digitized one of their programs over the pandemic, and they found a real increase in young people with autism participating and getting involved, purely because they found that a much easier way to engage with some of the group situations being a bit overwhelming. So I think it really can help with inclusivity. I do think though, Jess, you pulled out that those with English as a second language and Black young people weren't getting the same outcomes through the online learning. So I think there's some more work that we need to do as a foundation to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I don't have sort of concrete answers on what we need to do to kind of make sure they're getting the positive outcomes that the other young people are experiencing. So I think more to be done on that space.
Thank you, that's really interesting. Darren or Yamin, would you like to come in for a last comment before we close?
Nothing from me.
No, all good from my side.
Fantastic. Great, well,
Thanks for saving the day, Jess.
That's
I
all right.
And thank you everyone for joining us. If you obviously have any more questions around the report, then please feel free to get in touch with me directly. You'll find me on LinkedIn and all the usual places, so you can contact me there. I'm very happy to have another conversation about it. Yeah, or drop me a line via email. It's not too difficult to guess what that would be, and I'm sure you'll be able to find me with a little Google search. I'll also put my email in the chat in a minute, and you can contact me that way. But hopefully you found that an interesting conversation, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for the session.